over the scrum, a single throw of the net could trap several hundred birds at once. Once captured, the birds would usually be killed on the scene, their necks snapped with a pair of pincers, and then salted and barreled for shipment around the country by rail. But quite a few of them would be shipped alive to sportsmen's clubs to be used in trap shoots, events often drawing large crowds of spectators in which hunters would compete to see how many birds they could kill. Often these shoot-offs would end with mortally wounded birds littering the field after other injured victims had flown or staggered off to an even more drawn-out misery. By 1879, a group of Americans had come to believe that the suffering of the humble, seemingly inexhaustible passenger pigeon was due for reconsideration. Among them was George Thorndike Angell, president of one of the nation's most prominent animal advocacy groups, the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. He himself had spent little time on the pigeon shooting issue during his early years as an activist, but the brutality of the tournaments had clearly begun to weigh on him. In his group's publication, he challenged readers on their hypocrisy. A man will sit up all night and watch a favorite horse suffering from a bruise or sprain. A woman will cry herself to sleep over injuries by a prowling cat to a pet canary, and yet they are never haunted by wounded pigeons with broken legs or maimed wings, left to die of starvation, helpless and fluttering. He had no doubt, he wrote, that gentlemen who shoot pigeons and ladies who delight in looking on believe it to be a harmless amusement which hurts nobody. But he cautioned that God saw it differently, noting that the wounded pigeons from these shooting tournaments were left uncounted and forgotten save by him who notes the fall of every sparrow. That spring, Angell put forward a bill modeled on one that had passed in Michigan, with language that barred the keeping or using of any birds for the purpose of a target or to be shot at, either for amusement or as a test of skill in marksmanship. He attended a meeting of 400 Boston area clergy and convinced them to sign a petition against the practice, submitting their holy endorsements as a counterweight to all the outraged shooters who had begun lobbying legislators against the bill. In the end, the measure passed the Massachusetts State Senate by a margin of 2-1 and was signed into law in early April 1879. Soon thereafter, Angell secured what he believed to be the world's first conviction for a pigeon shoot. 6 young gentlemen had to pay around $60 in fines. It was a victory that Angell would celebrate for the rest of his life, but today, one cannot see it as anything other than bittersweet. The disappearance of trap shoots from American cities came far too late for the passenger pigeon. By the 1890s, it no longer alighted to roost by the thousands, let alone the millions. And soon after the turn of the 20th century, when a young man in Indiana shot the last known wild specimen, the passenger pigeon, that beautiful symbol of boundless American excess, was officially harvested to extinction. On an evening in that same spring of 1879, nearly 1,500 people gathered in Tremont Temple, an auditorium in the heart of Boston, to celebrate the 11th anniversary of the Massachusetts SPCA's founding. At 7:30, after some religious preambles, a unison reading from Scripture, "Ask now the beasts, and they will teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee," an opening prayer, and a hymn, George Angell stepped to the podium. His theme was the movement against cruelty to animals and its accomplishments, which to him seemed nothing less than miraculous. In 1866, when his fellow pioneer for the cause, Henry Bergh, had founded the nation's first animal protection society in New York, many states had no laws against the maltreatment of animals, and those on the books were woefully unenforced. The notion of animals and their welfare as a cause was absent, undiscussed, unconsidered in America. As Angell pointed out from the podium, when his Massachusetts group celebrated its first anniversary in 1869, it still was one of just